There's apparently some people don't get the message from stuff. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's get started. All right, if anybody join, nobody join, so be it. Ah, okay, hi, welcome to this week's trading analysis. All right, just starting to get back into the groove of things. So every Monday around 5 p.m. really, 5 to 6 p.m. I'm gonna be doing some trading analysis, just looking at the markets after market open, on Sunday evening, and just looking at potential setups that we could get for the rest of the week, or possibilities of possible setups that we could potentially have coming, right? And this week we do have a lot of things happening, right? So if we just look at the my Forex, my FX calendar, let me just sign in right here. I could just save all of that. All right. Yeah, so looking at the Forex calendar, the economic calendar, we do have a lot of news events coming up this week, right? So we do have interest rates, I believe, Wednesday for the Fed, which is really important, right? As you know, inflation is high in a lot of these economies, all the major economies, experiencing high inflation, a sort of a steady or a decrease in overall the pace of the economy itself. So there are fears of recessions and other stuff like that that can negatively impact these economies' currency, which does have a heavy impact into the markets, right? And mainly what we're looking at, what a lot of investors are particularly looking at is the reserve currency of the world, which is, you guessed it, the US dollar, right? So we do have the Fed interest rate decision, and as you can see here, the consensus from the previous, which was a 2.5%, which what interest rate is right now, right? The consensus is that we'll have a 0.75 bias point increase, right? And it's rumored to possibly see a 100 bias point increase potentially happening. So that's something that we could also see playing into the markets as well, depending, right? And there's a lot of things to talk about with just this particular news data itself, just because we already priced in that data. We'll get into that, right? And why that's so important, why I believe that's so important. We also have Fed press conference where we have Jerome Powell come out and talk about certain things like inflation, what the central bank, what the Fed is doing in order to curb inflation, what is their target right now, whether they're looking to either possibly hike in the future again, or where are they heading? Like what's the timetable that they're moving with, right? And he will discuss this, and that will also have an impact in the markets, right? We also have GBP, I believe, right? We had GBP interest rate decision as well, right? So you can see we are having an increase here around by about 0.5 of a bias point increase, right? Compared to the previous, that is consensus we have at 2.25%, right? So this is also a potential mover for the GBP, that we could potentially honestly get a sort of a impulse entry on, right? And we have jobless claims, a lot of stuff, right? S&P global market data as well. So we do have a lot of fundamental news coming into play, right? And that could kind of honestly explain the current market conditions that we are seeing, which is basically just like the calm before the storm, right? If you look across on the multiple pairs right here, we don't really have any trends emerging, right? Since the week has started, we don't really have any necessary trend forming right now. So looking at the AD CAD, CAD CHF as well, right? All these pairs, they're now starting to kind of move. Well, this one really moved here, right? AD NCT, and we'll talk about that as well if we get time, right? But a lot of the pairs just ranging sort of in between two zones, right? Like here, for instance, a near AD, And yeah, just a lot of them. That's what we've been getting thus far. And this is all leading into those interest rate decisions that we are seeing. And that will potentially just have set the tone for the currencies for the month continuing into the new month as well of October. Right. So in particular, what I'm looking at or what I'm like paying most attention to right now is that US dollar, right? So we could see that we do have interest rates for the US dollar coming on Wednesday, I believe around 2 o'clock, 2 p.m., right? Um, yeah, around 2 p.m. And that increase is what investors are really taking particular notice at, right? That's what they're paying attention at to, because what that'll tell us, right? And what that means, it basically tells us where the Fed stands, right? Where do they stand on their monetary policy, whether they're, taking actions seriously to curb this inflation, right? We also have Jerome Powell coming out to speak, and he'll give us a little rundown on what it is they're thinking with increasing the interest rate, what they're looking at. Maybe they want to see more performance from a certain economic data before they actually continue moving forward, or maybe they might cut back on some of more of their aggressive start, right? Maybe they might dial it back a little bit depending on what is happening in the economy, right? And that is the potential movers for these currencies, such as AD, USD, right? And I just like to note something. Let's go to let's go to daily, right? So on the daily chart, and I talked about this in the previous weekly analysis that I did put up on YouTube. Right, we could see overall we have this sort of a downtrending channel, right? So price has been steadily moving downwards, right, with a sort of a uniform pattern, right? And one of the things to note is that, okay, the AD is a risk asset, while the US dollar is the world's reserved currency. And there has been a lot of fluctuations between the two, again, with the high inflation and what that means for the economies, whether they're slowing down, whether that means that, okay, we have an increase of price and cost for goods and stuff like that, and what that means for citizens within those economies themselves, right? And stuff like the labor market as well, and all of that is affected by everything going on with that high inflation, all right? So that also played into the market, why things were kind of choppy for the past month or so, right? When we do look at it, if we're looking for like possible entries and stuff, you can see that price, okay, it moved a little bit, but not like the most clear stuff moves, right? It has been going down steadily, but in terms of getting an entry, it will be particularly tricky to do so depending on like what time frame you are looking at, right? If you're looking at the 1 hour to end done such and stuff like that, like right here, price was heading up, right? We started forming this sort of we could say sort of a support with this uptrend right here, right? And we start seeing price continue going up a little bit, right? If we just look at these other levels right here, if we take a at the top here, right? We saw that price reach and retest this area right here. Maybe, we test that as support for continuation moving higher if price was really going to do that. And then we had CPI data come out, right? And this is just like me, I want to highlight the fact of how important what the US dollar does, how important, how impactful it is for the overall market dynamic itself, right? So we had the CPI data come out. Let's just take a look of last week. All right, so we'll be looking at from the 12th to the 16th, and let's just apply that. All right, so interest CPI data, right? So this was the 13th. We had CPI. You can see that the consensus was 295.53, and we actually got a higher than expected value, right? 296.171, and that was the 13th. You can see that actually happened right here at 8 a.m. Around the same time that CPI data did come out, right? So that was while that hourly candle formed, 89, right? This came out at 8:30. It pushed price down, and we got this movement, and then price started to continuously head down some more, right? So again, what does that CPI means, right? So CPI, if we actually take a look of it here, yeah, they give us a a brief explanation, right? It's part of the it's consumer price index, right? And let's just look at the source information here. I want to give you guys like the a very like a detailed explanation of what CPI stands for, right? Let's see if we can find it here. The CPI data. Right? If not, I'll just explain it to you guys in my own words, right? So we have the CPI data for all consumer investment. The summary, right? So this is the report here, and they show you basically what the CPI index stands for. So you're just looking at the information from here, right? So it basically stands for the increase of goods and services, also education, excluding energy and like oil. So the stuff that fluctuate a lot excludes that. And is basically the amount or change in those goods or services, right, over a period of time, right? And that's what the CPI data is, right? And it gives us a basic view of how the economy is performing. And that also leads with the high inflation. So what happened when we got that higher CPI data? What it means, or basically what's the tone that sets for future, future actions that the Fed may take, right? That's what we're looking at. What that basically means and why this movement was like so exaggerated, is the word, right? Was because what investors thinking of now is, okay, CPI came out high, obviously, that is with intangible with the high inflation. So what could we expect from the Fed? Obviously, what we'll expect is an interest rates increase because we need the Fed to do something in order to curb this inflation, right? So we want to bring inflationary levels back down to safer levels, which is around 2 to 3%. That's the usual target of where, you want inflation to be that's controllable, right? And, could be regulated, right? So we expect the Fed to be more hawkish. We expect to see that interest rates increase, be more of a guaranteed thing to happen. And we might even see a larger increase than what we're seeing as the consensus right now, right? So again, we might get an increase from that 0.75 bias point to a 100 bias point increase, right? So that is what this data is. That's why like the CPI number heavily impacted the US dollar, right? So we saw some USD buying because now the US dollar is more attractive to investors, to the large banks, the players, whoever, with the majority of money that makes the market move. It's not retail traders, it's not us, it's not the little guy, it's the big companies with the big dollars that move the markets, right? So this data was priced in, and we saw that continuation move to the downside playing out for the US dollar, right? So that's what caused that US dollar bullishness from then for the rest of last week, right? And that is what played into the markets. Now expecting for this week and all of this, just US dollar. US dollar is the main thing that we're looking at, right? So the expectancy for this week or for Wednesday, what I'm expecting to see is, again, an increase of the interest rates from the previous. Now, there's two things that could possibly happen, right? Now, like I said, markets are already priced in, right? And the market is always forward thinking, right? They're thinking about things that could possibly happen in the future, right? So what also already priced in is the rumor that we may have a 100 basis point increase, right? However, as you can see, as the consensus is, take a look again for this week, right? You can see the consensus is a basis point increase of 0.75, right? Because, we went from 2.5% to 3.25%. You minus this from that, you get 0.75, right? So that's the increase, that is consensus that we're seeing. Now, if markets priced in that 100 basis point increase early, right? What do you think will happen when you do see the interest rate just staying the same as what we expected, right? So if interest rates comes out, if the actual comes out as this, the consensus, another increase to like 3.5, or 4, all right? Well, 4 is too much, but like 3.5%, right? What do you think would happen? More than likely, because it happened already, it happened more than once already, right? More than likely, what would happen? Let's say around price reaches around here, right? So let's say price dances around, continues on. We approach Wednesday, news about to come out, and prices right here into this area, right? I'm just using this example. So this is a level of resistance around so, right? After this large extended move to the downside, we're looking at possible levels where price could reverse from, right? Price could reverse from this level right here, or maybe it could move, it could reverse from right here, which part that the CPI data ended with this long movement, right? We could see a retracement back to this area and then possibly a fallback, right? So let's say throughout now and then, right, price reaches either here or it reaches up here, right? So you reach out a clear level. That's one thing that we know. If we're looking to jump in a trade, reach a clear level of resistance, right? So now we're looking to see whether the interest rates is something we could possibly get a play on or not, right? If price does come out at 3.5% in terms of the interest rates increase, then more than likely we'll see that movement continuing to the downside. We'll see price continuing moving down. So from here or there, right? We'll actually see price push lower because now the US dollar becomes a more attractive asset to hold, right? Interest rate, what that does is it curbs the amount of lending, right? And thereby it brings down the overall spending in the economy, and that is what helps bring down inflation, right? And that makes the dollar more attractive because investors get a larger return on their investment and when you have higher interest rates, right? That in itself should be kind of self-explanatory, right? So that is a potential. This has a potential to actually play out, right? This is a possibility if we do see that 100 basis point increase. But what if we have the opposite, right? What if price does come out? What if the interest rate does come out as the expected consensus here, right? Then that would means that the overall move that we did have from beforehand, which is that CPI data move, right, would have been over exaggerated. Markets already priced in that data. So if we just came out like, okay, we have a normal increase, then it's not really that impactful. Maybe yes, we might see price actually spike to the downside, right? So we might see from this area here, price spikes down. But I assure you, in that same hour when that data releases, if it's like that same 3.5%, in that same hour, price would pull back and you'll see it start heading up, right? Because we already priced in that 100 basis point increase. And this is the thing about markets that you won't get from just knowing technicals alone. It's understanding market psychology, how investors think, and the overall way the market moves, right? Because again, market is forward thinking. And when you're trading, you're not dealing, with a chart and statistics alone, right? You're dealing with a variety of other people, right? Big banks, you have to know how they're thinking, you have to know how they're placing their money and how they're looking at the charts as well, right? And that will help you avoid making careless mistakes, staying out of trades that may look good, but again, there's some underlying fundamental reason why a trade may not be worth taking at the point of time, just like this interest rate coming up right now, right? Again, we all know that when interest rates increase, we see that price, whatever currency, whatever asset it is, moves to the it usually moves bullish, right? When we do get an interest rate increase. But again, we are dealing with uncertain times. We have a lot of things, a lot of firsts happening, right? Right now in the markets, in the world, really, things that haven't happened in a long while, such as COVID, the levels of inflation that we are having right now is all a first. And as well as, we had the big Russia-Ukraine war and stuff like that. All of those are first and things that haven't happened like in years, right? So that really impacts the market in a psychological way that you won't get from just technicals alone. And that is something I think is worth noting. just because honestly it helps in understanding how others may view the market, right? Or the psychological movements behind why price is moving, how it's moving, right? So right now, right, if we're looking for a trade sake, right? Right now, this is what I think. Whether price dances around and comes back into this area, wherever it reaches Wednesday, if we do have a clear area of resistance, right? If price continues moving up until that is, then I'll look to possibly take a trade at that area for that 100 basis point increase consensus that that's rumor leaking around, right? Because that is what a lot of investors would be looking at, right? And would be looking to see. So you could either put a sell stop somewhere around here. Let's say price reaches up passes that. You could get in on the initial spike when the news data releases, if it does releases in our favor, right? If the opposite does happen, then price will continue upwards. You put a buy stop as well. Some traders, they'll put a sell stop and a buy stop. So they'll put one here and they'll put one around here. Let's just change the color, right? And they'll put like one here, right? And wherever price spikes into, they'll delete the next one and continue do it with that, right? But again, you have to understand the fundamental driver behind that. And that way you can know, okay, maybe this is a trade I could hold, right? Maybe I don't have to get out of the initial spike, right? Maybe price may close below my level right here. And that's a good thing because we'll be in profit. And we can see a continuation moving down. Or maybe this is just the first hour, price spikes down, and then it's just gonna work back up. You get stopped out there, sell, it goes to a buy, it pulls back, you get stopped out there, buy, I just lose 2-4% for no reason, right? So that's something you should note as well, depending. You could either stay out of the trade, right? Wait until afterwards, because what we do have happening, and a lot of times with interest rate decisions, we also have the Fed chair power speaking about what the central bank is doing, what is their target, what is their outlook, what is their stance on inflation. Obviously, it's gonna say if the Fed remains steadfast in their goal in decreasing inflation and stuff like that, right? Those are things expected comments to hear from Fed Powell at this point, because it's like a repetitive thing, keeps on over and over for each Fed conference, right? But he may talk about something else. Maybe the economy is slowing, and maybe that's just given the Fed, they're taking their time analyzing the data to further move forward to what their next step is, and that would be sort of bearish for the currency itself. So we could actually see maybe price might just reverse and continue pushing up, right? So that's something you should pay attention to as well. And not just for the interest rates, right? The interest rate might be the first driver, but also what Fed Powell has to say at the conference, right? So those are the two major things that will really impact the US dollar for Wednesday. So hopefully understand. If anybody have any questions, feel free to ask, right? You could type in the chat. If you understand thus far, then cool. Obviously, I'm recording this right now, so as we're finished here, I will post it up on YouTube so you can watch it. If there's anything that you don't understand, you could always replay it and make sure that you get the gist or whatever the case is. So just indicate to me if you guys understand, if I'm moving too fast or anything. If you have any questions, you can just type in the chat. Let me know what's up. All right, so just let me know what you guys are thinking, right? Hopefully the information you guys find is helpful. I'm gonna assume that everybody understand what I'm saying thus far, right? These are some trades that we took here in the VIP, right? This is your GBP. I could actually pull this up right now. This is Discord VIP. All right, this was right. So you had a Euro GBP sell. You can see that we took it right here. On the 15-minute chart, right? And we also had an AD card sell as well at the starting of the week, right? Which was like the Sunday evening or something like that as market. So but particularly why I took this out, right? So you guys could get like an insight of, okay, what is he looking at? Why was this a trade that, had a potentiality to play out? Overall, we've been moving up on the chart, right? Um, Something that happens a lot of times, and you may notice it, when the US dollar is bullish, you would also see like the euro itself being also like a currency that will move with that bullishness as well, right? Obviously not on something like Euro USD. Obviously, the bullish currency would just move in whatever direction that is. But looking at the other cross pairs such as your GP, your CAD, and even your AD to some extent, right? But more so the Euro NZD as well. Euro GP and Euro NZD, those are the movers. Those are the ones that move a lot. When I do have dollar strength, it moves in favor of the euro, right? This could be a fundamental reason. It could be, just like a correlation type kind of thing, right? But this is just something that I've noted for a while, and it's something that I've always paid attention to as well. All right. So you could also pay attention to it in your next time trading. If you want to move, you want to trade two pairs at the same time, maybe something that have some correlation with the next one. You'll get entry, you can enter the two, maybe you're risking 0.5% on each, right? And that way you could diversify your trading while also minimizing your risk and controlling, like having proper control and risk management, right? So yeah, the chart, well, the currency itself is moving up, right? So we were moving up very strongly. Price came up here. If you're looking at the daily, you can see that, all right, these were the daily levels of, importance right here. Let me just put that as primary levels. Right, so these were the daily levels that we're looking at. At this point, we're looking at some sort of rejection. Price pushback on this day, right? Closing over that daily level. What's your bias on AD card as the CPI data is coming out tomorrow? Okay, just now. I'll get into that just now. All right. Let me just explain this first. All right, so price came up, pushed past this area right here of resistance, as you can see, right? And then we got a continuation moving up. So we could say that the euro is a little bit more bullish, right? Again, we do have some stuff happening with the GBP. As you know, there's a change in regime because Queen Elizabeth died. So that as well could affect the GBP itself, the pound, right? Making it sort of weaker with that change in regime, depending on how economists feels with Prince Charles, yeah, now becoming king, right? So again, that may be a possible reason why the GBP itself was sort of like weaker and in between these two currencies, right? But just noting what we had, price came up here. I was looking at this possible level to sell from, right? Once we did come into this area, I noted that, all right, we made this high after these multiple rejection wicks. And then we started to close from this area right here, looking at the 15 minutes. And this was my first initial, I believe my first initial sell, right? So we had this area hitting first, then we came back down right into this area. As you can see, we start forming a sort of a zone, right? So we just note this high, came back down here, right? Retested, started pushing back up right here. And the possibility of what we could see happening is just following along with this sort of a range that we are in, right? Again, it's unsure to say whether price is going to, continue heading up or down from here. So that's why at this point, I felt comfortable enough to put money on risk to actually see some sell side action, right? Again, what we have happening right now, right? It's a lot of uncertainty. We have the interest rates. There's always this calm before the storm. We see prices ranging before those interest rate decisions do come out, and that sets the tone for that currency for the remainder of the month, or month or two, right? Depending until the next interest rates or whatever major impactful news that we do have for that currency itself, right? So at this point, after we tested here, obviously we made a support at that point. Price came back here. We note that this area of rejection. Hence, we could say, all right, maybe we're starting to trade in a sort of a range kind of scenario, right? Price has started to calm down a little bit. So I can now, I'm more comfortable, putting money to risk on this potential trade setup, right? Because now we're going to fill this area and possibly pull from there, right? And that is what we saw happening right here. Might take very long, like the whole day for it to actually reach around 3% right here. Again, this is always something that you could expect happening, right? Markets tend to move a little slower before with the big news events, right? And we were able to bank on that profit a little bit. We could get a continuation from here as well. If we do see price pull past this area, filling back down into this zone right here, right? So hopefully you understand that. Looking at the 80 card, right? Question was, what's your bias on 80 card as the CPI that is coming out tomorrow, right? So the thing is, the card has been one of the more very strong performing economies, right? They've been like ahead of things thus far, right? Or at least to my knowledge. On 80 card, I did take a sell right around this area right here. As you can see, we did reach around 2% in profit. I end up not closing until price came back. Yeah, I expected to retract and continue, right? At the starting of the week also, we did have that US dollar strength kind of coming in, right? So we saw like the US dollar just keep on pushing, and then it started giving up its gains during like the NYSE open this morning, like 9-10 a.m. somewhere there, right? And then price just started to do this weirdness where it pulled back all the way to the entry. Now overall, what I am looking at, if we're looking at daily, just giving it a quick look right here, right? You can see I noted this kind of channel trend where price is retracting, continuously coming down. Looking at the more recent data, which is this year, right? We can see that, okay, we do see some sort of pattern with price coming down, right? In what my target is basically right here, right? So this is like my end goal as to where I want to see price reach or where I see price potentially reaching. Going on the 4-hour and the 1-hour, right? I want to see some sort of rejection from this trend area, right? We could potentially come back all the way here, right? We could potentially come back all the way into this resistance zone, right? And then price could pull away from that. But yeah, I am looking more strongly for card buys, right? I am more strongly bullish on the card, right, than I am on like the AD, Euro, or any other card crossfades, right? The only thing that I don't have the same bias for is the USD card, just because again, we do have that interest rates and all those other stuff paying for the US dollar, right? So this is a trade that I am in. I think has the potentiality to play out. Looking at the US, looking at the card data, where is it? Right, we can see that the inflation and the CPI trimmed, right? And this is not like CPI, right? This is a comparison sort of data that you get in here, right? So we can see that we are expecting to see for the comparison themselves, we are looking to see sort of a decrease, right? So that is good in a sense, but in terms of how the market would react to that data, we would see like some sort of pullback on the card itself, right? So that is why I would say I'll wait to see what could possibly happen, right? If price pulls back into this area again, we do have this sort of trend emerging right now. So at this point, if price pulls into this area, then I would look to potentially sell, just because we do have that trend going. Depending on what the data we get or we might see, right, may also influence the movement of the card as well, right? So it's basically you have to wait and see, really, right? And in terms of like what I'm expecting, yeah, I'm expecting price to at least come up into this area and possibly look for like sells or sell continuation if it doesn't push fast and continue higher, right? So yeah, I'm looking to see it possibly come into this area right here, right? Retest those resistance, and then possibly come back down. Right. So that is something that I'm looking at. CAD JPY and like the other CAD cross pairs, I won't particularly trade CAD JPY right now just because we do have mixed fundamentals when it comes to the risk assets such as CAD and the safe haven currencies such as the Japanese yen, right? Don't think you'll get the best possible set of returns from trading up here like this right now when the market sort of had this duality kind of uncertainty to it as well. So the things that you'll get more of a reward out of is the crosswords such as the AD card, NCD card, and GBP card as well, right? Those you're paying up the risk assets against sort of a more outline of performing currency, right? Again, we're not too focused on the risk asset. Therefore, we could see some short size, some selling potential on those. And therefore, you could also see a rally on the card. So that's like, if you're going to trade the card, I would pay it with those currencies, those crossfades, right? Not something like the card JPY or USD card, anything like that, right? Because those may move differently than what you may expect or what your fundamental bias is, right? So hopefully that helps. I don't want to take up too much of you guys' time. I'm recording this, so I'll post it up on YouTube for you guys if you want to watch. If you find this helpful, informative, then thank you for joining. I hope I helped in some way in terms of your understanding with the markets. Maybe some things are clearer for you now than it was before. As always, feel free to reach out to me. I'm just a click away, whether it's on Discord, you have my personal information, anything like that. Feel free to hit me up at any time. And if I can help you out with a question, setting up a one-on-one, something like that, then yeah, that's no issue. Just feel free to contact me anytime, right, guys? So that's it for this. Again, thank you for joining. I hope you have a great trading week, and I'll see you Wednesday. Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a live stream on YouTube. I believe around 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Sorry. So that's something that you could potentially join. And yeah, we just vibe and trade. I'll be trading GBP, JPY, and looking at other stuff as well. And we'll also possibly come into and watch what plays out for that interest rates for the US dollar. Right. So that's it, guys. Have a great trading week. See you guys Wednesday. Peace.